my name's Nichole. My pronouns are she, hers. I just graduated college, university from this year with a Bachelor's of Arts in Public Health Policy and 2 minors in Gender and Sexuality Studies and Asian American Studies from UCI. Very odd time to graduate at this moment. Right now I am eating vegan pasta with a coffee off to the side. Oh man, this is a hard choose. Go, Jairah.
My name is Jairah. My pronouns are she's and hers. I'm a public health and an economy major at Manoa. I'm currently eating Simon, and I have like water and soda. I'm trying not to drink soda, but it was right in front of my face. It was like calling to me. But yeah. I was using Alejandro because we were talking about Alejandros. Alfredo, you're next.
But yeah, my name's Alfredo. I graduated from San Diego State with a bachelor's in science at Child and Family Development in 2019.
Why are you interested in mental health?
Oof, that's a really good question. I guess I gotta say, there's a lot more wounds being left behind when you are a Filipino, a woman of color, on SES or everything. Like, you experience so much. Like, I'm interested in mental health because there's a lot more mental violence that happens around. And especially when hospitals don't recognize it, doctors don't recognize it, or they're slowly starting to recognize it. And, there's a lot more scar, a lot of our mental health is just affected by not just where we live in our environment, but also from our families. So I don't know about y'all, but I got a lot of scars and trying to accept that, hey, I'm beautiful. I'm a beautiful brown woman. I'm gonna live with this mental health, and I gotta overcome a lot of imposter syndrome, perfectionism, model minority myth, colonial mentality. The list goes on and on and on, and it's what keeps me sane, especially in this political climate at the moment, with 45 taking down almost everything from TikTok to whatever the next thing he wants to tweet about. And that's the reason why I think mental health is important to me. There's a lot of healing that has to go on with it because you're living with it.
I feel like for me, in terms of importance, mental health is a balance between health and wellness in general. So I see it as a spectrum of, you have your physical health, you have your mental health, you have your spiritual and emotional. So mental health is kind of in that flat archy of just you kind of need this in order for the rest of it to thrive. So that's why I try to take very good care of my mental health, because if that's not in check, the rest of everything else is not in check. So I need I held it to a very high importance, so that way I know that I'm good at the end of the day.
From experience, Filipinos don't really talk about mental health. They don't really consider it as a real thing compared to actual diseases and illnesses that showcase physical. Growing up, oftentimes I would hear you're just having a bad day. Tomorrow's gonna be better. That kind those kind of comments. Those kinds of comments don't really do well for individuals who are experiencing that are mentally drained and things like that, because it seems like what they're feeling, what they're experiencing is being invalidated. I am interested in mental health because I generally think it's a topic that needs to be discussed more, especially in Filipino families. I am a big believer that you are a reflection of your parents' teachings. So obviously I wouldn't want my future kids to think that their mental health isn't as important compared to their physical well-being.
Why is it difficult to be vulnerable in Filipino households?
There's so many layers with that. I think I feel like y'all will understand where I'm coming from, is that especially from a female's perspective, it's all set in perfectionists. My parents, when they left the Philippines, I think there was a lot of pressure for them to hold it together, especially the friend of the family that they left behind. It looks very different in how they hold it together, from sending remittances, sending money back, to every time they go back to the Philippines, they have to just put a happy smile on their face. It's hard to really discuss with the family that they left behind in the Philippines, be hey, I'm struggling too. It's almost the same thing, but because like economy, politics in the Philippines and the US play out hella differently, it's like, and especially because it is the American dream. You know, a lot of Filipinos, especially who are in the diaspora, who are in the United States, who left the Philippines, they can't give a complaint because, you know, so many things, so many layers goes into like how they got out of the Philippines, from like family preparing them to send them over with a lot of money, what money saved up from clothes and clothes saved up. And so it's like it's rooted in like, and I'm gonna butcher this so badly. It's rooted in utangan na loob, where you can't complain because a lot of people put you in the spot where you are. You know, you can't complain because you made it with so much help and people on your shoulders. Like, they're rooting for you. You can't break down, and if you break down, then we sent the wrong person. Oh yeah, so like, you know, parents, you're the family that you leave behind. They expect you to like not complain, because if you do complain, they feel like they sent the wrong child. They sent the wrong person over to the States. And so it's like, it's so hard to be vulnerable because you have to put on such a strong forefront. And then when you're female, it gets even more complex. There's more layers to that. Like, you got to be like the most perfect virgin out there, like the Virgin Mary. Catholicism, ladies, speak into it. Like that shit. Oof. And so it's hard to be vulnerable, you know, being in the Filipino diaspora, being Filipino outside of the Philippines, because, you know, there's no room for you to complain, because if you complain, your family thinks that they sent the wrong person.
I think on what Nichole was saying, it's like the way I see it is that once you're over here, especially if like you're an immigrant over here, you're technically on survival mode. Like you kind of have to like hustle as much as you can to send back money to the Philippines and also survive here and everything. It's a tough life, and it's almost seen like talking about mental health is more of a luxury rather than a necessity and everything. So it sucks that that is a thing, but that's like, it's also rooted in like a lot of things in our history.
And to add on, there is an expectation that you have to do well. You always have, your mental health goes last because there are things that you have to do. So like, for example, as an immigrant, like, you are lucky that you're even here. And then like, to add on with what Nichole was saying about complaining, when you complain, it means that you're ungrateful, that you're even here. So it's just a lot of, there's like a certain image, standards that you have to follow Filipino household. And then honestly, one of them is not discussing your mental health. It's more about, you gotta go to school, you have to get your degree, you have to find good jobs and those kind of things. Not about sitting down with your parents talking about, oh, I had a really bad day and lately it's been like this, and like those kind of things.
Thank you for bringing that up. And it's actually a great segue to talking about who from here is a first generation, second gen. Second.
Can you explain what that means?
So going back to the generation, do you think that goes to play in how we perceive?
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like, my grandma is very traditional. Her way of thinking is very like how my relatives in the Philippines think. My parents, they try to be more open, but like my grandma, she's regarding like the expectation of females. She thinks that females should stay at home, take care, those kind of things. But my parents, you could see a shift in the way that they view things. They think like, if you want to stay home, you can, but you can work too, kind of thing. Like, you have options now.
Off on Jairah, like, that is incredibly true. Like, I can see the differences like between generations in my mom, who was a first gen immigrant, and then my grandma, who I guess you can call her a 1.5, where it really tacks on to like how they view like a female having a career. My mom really wants me to, like, you know, be a nurse just to live comfortably, but that's second to marry wealthy marry a wealthy man to live comfortably too. And then, you know, my grandma, she's like, I guess you can call her progressive, because she's hella supported to like my cousins who, you know, went through some really awful. Can I curse? Question:
Yes.
Can I curse?
You can.
Okay, cool. Who went through some really awful shit during high school. And so it's really such a matter of like how they like, at least for me, the differences in views is really regarded in like what is the future for a Filipina.
This is a little tough. This question's kind of tough to answer because if you were asking me this question like back in high school, it would be completely different because like the whole mental health stigma was very strong back then. But compared to now, especially with my family's evolution and understanding like how to better their mental health, being more okay with talking about it, it's completely different. Everyone's more okay. So it's also like difficult because I come from a like first gen 1.5 like family and everything, Navy family, where you didn't have that luxury of talking about your mental health. But now that everyone's a little bit more, I wouldn't say Americanized, but more accepting of the fact that mental health is an issue or mental illness issue and everything, we take it a lot more seriously. So it's just the whole like evolution of it's kind of unique, but I would say like now it's a lot more healthy than it was before.
To build off from what you just said, Alfredo, especially with the delivery of mental health, how do you think it's it's better now than before?
People are just talking about it more. Like it's more like when we talk about it, it's normalized because yeah, there are people in my family that do have mental illness, so that's something we have to like work towards, but we don't like see it as more a problem, but more so as something that needs like attention and everything, rather than something that needs to be like brushed under like the rug. Like if this was like back in high school for me and everything, those kind of problems would just be brushed under the rug instead of actually talked about and taken care of. So I guess that's how it changed.
I want to build off on Alfredo's point, especially in the point that he brought up earlier, where mental health is part of like your physical, is just as should be just as taken care of as your physical health. Like it's under the umbrella of your whole being, your well-being of health. And you know, I guess for me, it gotten better to the point where, you know, mental health is not treated or solely treated with just prayers to God, or you know, for prayers or anything. It's now like my family is being open about like talking about therapy, talking about support groups, like actually looking into the fact that, you know, as westernized as it is to seek out counseling and other things, it kind of harkens, it's kind of like needed, especially because, you know, talk as much of it's a privilege of it to talk about mental health. We also gotta kind of look at mental health in a way where, you know, the framework of it was sort of colonized. It's sort of westernized. It's like the research on it is from a westernized centric perspective, when we should all, when it's like common knowledge that mental health was also as vastly important as physical health, you know, in Asian countries. It's just it didn't exist under a male doctor. It didn't exist under a nurse. It existed under a completely different name. And we also had like, you know, our own healing practices that goes along with it. And so I think there is a really cool resurgence of seeing how we talk about mental health in the context of, you know, healing a lot of colonial mentality, colonized thinking, as well as just like the scars we held on for so long.
So like when I have these kinds of conversation with my mom, a lot of the times it's kind of like stereotype the things that she knows. I don't think she knows much of like what it is now kind of thing. I think it's a lot of like what it was before.
It's very relatable, girl. Like I get it. She thinks about the extremes of like, you know, seeing a psych ward, right, in like horror movies versus like stress, anxiety, depression, like some weird odd types of mood swings actually exist in the realm and a spectrum in mental health.
I think just touching on that, like, so personally, before I went into like education and everything, I was in nursing, so I did work as a CNA before, and during my clinicals and everything, I was put in the psych ward and everything, and I saw different patients with like different kind of mental illnesses. So like I saw different people on the like dementia spectrum and everything. And I think just touching on what both of you were saying, especially with movies, like the way like American movies do things is they like I'm trying to find the right word, but they romanticize a lot of things. Like if I'm trying to remember what movie it is. Oh, so just like what they do with the Joker and everything, like that man clearly has like a mental illness, but they like bump it up to like by 100 and everything. But that's not what all of like those mental illnesses look like and everything. So it's like you can see someone that's like not physically feeling anything, but they still have like a mental illness or like a mental health problem. And then you could have someone on the other side of the spectrum where it's like, oh, they're experiencing it on like a completely different level where it's like kind of hard to handle. So it's, yeah, I think that that's kind of the fault with like American cinema where they kind of like glorify and romanticize like mental health. So it's kind of harder to explain it to like immigrant families because like they're so entranced with like American culture that's like, oh, this is probably like the standard. But yeah, this goes back to the whole Americanization, colonization, colonial mentality and everything.
Going along the lines of what you guys just shared out, how did you guys came to like talk about incorporate mental health within like it's a normal thing to have?
My campus was, approached it very delicately, still shallow in a way, but there was a lot of people, students around me talking about mental health, saying like it's okay to have emotions, it's okay to cry, it's okay to like just go through a very difficult time. And so that I guess that was sort of the seed that started me to understand like mental health is something I'm gonna live with, something I need to take care of. It's like hygiene for me. It's like, meditation's like taking a shower. um, and it got to a point, at least for me, it got to a point where I really needed to take care of my mental health. I really need to incorporate it into like it's something I'm living with, like my own like body, is because I got really there were too many times that I broke down too easily during my time as a student, and sometimes very early on of like my school year. Like I get into my third year and I'm like breaking down within like week one, and my friends look at me, it's like, girl, it's week one. What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm crying. And so it it really helps me, like, just like when you were showering, you need a body wash, you need a loofah. For me, I need like meditation, journaling, a therapist to just really take care of that, and in a way that I finally know that I'm living with it and living it like it's a part of an extension of myself.
For me, the conversation of like normalizing mental health comes a lot from my group of friends. So for me, like my high school journey, my middle school friends, we all became like, we continued our friendship through high school till until ninth grade finished, and then we all just went our separate ways. But then it was the support of the new friends that I've made, and then how comfortable I felt with them, and they were very different from the other group of friends that I had transitioning from middle school to high school. They made it easier to have this kind of conversation, and then once that the conversation started, for me, I realized that, oh my god, I'm not by myself. Like they're going through the same thing. And then from that friendship, it was a lot of support. With their support and like just being able to go to them, it made it easier for me to have the conversation with new friends that I've created. Things. So shout outs to my best friends for like being there for me and helping me.
Oh, okay, just yeah, touching upon that. Yeah, same with me. Like I surrounded myself with people who are a lot healthier for me in the sense of mental health. Everyone was normalizing, and I also made closer friends with people like in the mental health industry and everything. Like they were doing psychiatry work. They were also doing like social work and everything. So a lot of the things going on like in your brain and everything and how it's affecting your body is more normal. So that's when I started normalizing it a little bit more. I'm still like normalizing it as I go because there's still things that I'm learning. So it's like it's still a journey that's like going on and everything. But yeah, it's been great ever since I started bringing more people into my circle that were on the same wavelength as me, and then being more understanding about like what's going on and everything.
I just want to clarify something. When I mean healing for your mental health, it really is very different when it's a very different language that I use when it comes to physical wounds and stuff where, you know, there's a cure, there's a treatment. Like it can be overcome, it can be you're back to normal like in a matter of time versus like healing where you're not really gonna there's no point of normalcy for it. You're living with it and you're living with it in a very healthy way. You're living with it in a non-toxic way. You're accepting it more so than tolerating it. And so it's I just want to be clear. I want to be clear about like how I'm going to be using a lot of healing language for mental health versus like physical health stuff.
The way I healed myself and I continue to heal myself, it's just I talk a lot. I just talk. Talk to people that have seen me in a vulnerable stage. I talk to people who are like my safe heaven kind of thing. And then also I take time for myself. I feel like people our age, like people in our generation kind of feels like they always got to be going out, they always got to be doing something, they got to be productive, like they need to be doing something. But honestly, for me, I think it's like it's okay for you to take a step back. If you want to sleep all day, go for it. If that's what works for you. If you want to have a Netflix series, like watch Netflix, binge it. You want to read, you want to write. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of writing, but it's like I write just random things. I just when I have time, I do it. But when I feel like there is a lot going on, I write a lot. I write more. Then other activities would be like I love to watch my favorite shows that like gives me happiness and stuff. I do things that makes me happy. And then it just helps make me feel better by doing things that calms and makes my heart woohoo.
Oh my God, hearing that, I love that because that's what I do too. And I just made up this acronym on the spot too because of your story, Jairah. It's called which is literally called, I really was thinking like PSP, which is like patience, space, and personal boundary. So that's where it comes from. I'm not really good at it. Please forgive me, viewers. I'm really not good at it. I'm Americanized, but I really think like with mental health, you really do need a lot of patience about it, especially with yourself, because one, it's a very new thing to like understand and recognize that there's something going on with you, and it can be scary at first. It can be scary like just thinking that you're wrong when you know we've been raised with so much ideas that we are the right person. And so like it is a lot of patience that you need, and then you need a lot of space for it. Just like Jairah said, like, you know, whatever time you take for like Netflix, talking to friends, talking to anyone, really make that space for yourself. Like make it your safe haven. For me as a young community organizer, a lot of my my woohoo spaces are where I'm meeting with like my with my own community members, where we're going out and having some activist time, but also at the same time I'm talking with my friends, we're spilling tea about friends, about titas, titos, whatever. And then there's time with myself where I just need a break, like whatever that is. And then personal boundaries is literally learning how to say no, taking inventory of your capacity, because you know it's a very toxic trait in our Filipino culture. This is one thing I should have mentioned earlier when it comes to women and when it comes to being that Filipino outside the Philippines, is that they constantly expect you to keep giving and giving and giving and giving, and you know, to the point that you have nothing. And so like taking inventory of what you are able to do is such a godsend skill to have, and always.
And just touching upon that, I remember like there's this video that I watched, I think like a few years back, like I don't know if it was a TED talk, but it was like a talk by Lisa Nichols and everything. I think she's like this mental health expert, and she was talking about like how when you're loving something, you can't like love from the cup, you have to love from your like overflow and everything. So that's how I equate mental health in my own healing and everything. I can't like continue giving if like my cup's dry, so like I need to make sure like I'm overflowing as the things are going. And just like Nichole was saying, yeah, honestly, if you have to take days for yourself, like take them, like especially if you're doing community organizing, especially during this time, like you just had to deal with like COVID, you're doing like Black Lives Matter stuff, and now you have to do with like anti like terror bill stuff. Like that happened in like a span of 5 months. That personally for me, that's like a lot of organizing to do in such a small amount of time. So I need to take my break. So like I give myself at least like 5 minutes a day just to like breathe, reflect, and everything. Or just like playing Animal Crossing or playing Pokemon or something. Like I need like time just to myself so I could like reset, and then whatever creative juices I get from like taking a break, I could bring back to like the work that I'm doing. So it's not necessarily healing per se, but it's more so like it's kind of like I'm bringing it back to like Animal Crossing. It's like you're upkeeping like your island and everything. Like you can't let so many weeds grow in it and everything. Like you have to make sure like your island's kept, or it's gonna be like one of those days where you don't play the game for like a month and then you see like weeds everywhere. So like you need to continuously take care of yourself and all that. Like it's a process, and it's like it's a lifelong journey and everything. So that's all I gotta say for my piece there.
Oh my god, I love the Animal Crossing analogy. It's so good. Man, Alfredo, drop your handle.
I'll drop it a little later, but yeah, I'll send my friend code in a bit.
It was actually a beautiful analogy. I don't have Animal Crossing, but I hear it everywhere. Am I going with this? I think in the basis of our mental health, especially being able to, because mental health is in everything that we do. What we do, where we go, mental health is like the foundation of every single thing. And in the realm of like bringing it back to the toxic Filipino mentality, how do you want to address that to anyone that you meet?
Have the conversation of toxicity outside of like someone who's like someone who's not Filipino, or like just to anyone regardless. Oh, I don't know.
That answer. Good. End of conversation.
Well, I think just touching on that, like it's okay to not know, because there's not like one singular answer. Everyone kind of has like their own way of doing it. Like for me personally, the way I want to do it for like future sense is like I'm getting to that point where like I'm closer to 30 than I am to like 20 right now. So just like saying like dating my age and everything, like my goal for like family and everything is to like normalize it for like my kids. Like, hey, it's okay to like feel sad or whatever. It's okay to feel like this type of way. Like I want to normalize those kind of conversations. So like it's not one of those like, because there's a lot of intergenerational trauma within like Filipinos, regardless of like wherever you are from the motherland and everything, like that gets carried on from generation to generation. If something is not taken care of, it's gonna hurt like the next generation after us. So I'm trying to be like that intervention for like the generation that comes after me and everything. So yeah, I just want to normalize those conversations a little bit more. Like it's yeah, just treating it like it's a cold or something or a flu. Like you got to take care of it.
Agreed. I think approaching people to just telling people that it's like it's like part of your hygiene. It's a part of your like your lifestyle. It's gonna be a part of your life. It never goes anywhere. Just telling folks just that, or starting the conversation with that, and then ending it with, mental health is like your biggest defense against any type of violence that you'll feel. It's the one that breaks all the patterns of like from domestic violence, violence from misogyny, xenophobia, racism. It's fat phobia. It is your shield. It is what and your sword that will help you persevere like in your everyday life.
Only thing running through my head is how what Alfredo was saying about he's closer to 30 and like to his kids and then the future generations kind of thing. In my head, the person I'm having a conversation is my kids, my non-existent kids. But yeah, it's them. I think the most important thing when you're having a conversation is that you're really listening to what they're saying. Like that you become a space where they can tell you anything. When you try to have when initiating a conversation with somebody who's not familiar with mental health, I think one of the most important thing is that you don't overwhelm them with information, or you don't make them feel some type of way that just because they don't know about it kind of thing. Be welcoming, be like be a comfortable space, that kind of thing. When having conversation with like older people, um find something relatable to them to start off the conversation to get their attention. Because if you straight up say that, oh, you if you start like if you straight up start talking about mental health, their attention is already out the door because for various reasons, their beliefs already, how they view things and those kind of things. That's why it's always good to have to start off with something relatable to them, so you'll get their attention and they'll be more willing to listen to you. Yeah.
I totally agree. And just to like add on to that, I think, and this is something that like Jairah like opened up, or I think Chachie, I can't remember who, where people really think that that mental health is like the most ugliest part of themselves that they gotta cure, they gotta solve, they gotta like overcome, they just gotta not have it. But here's the thing, as humans, we are flawed, and that's the most beautiful thing about us. And so, like, mental health helps us address the flaws that we have, the ugliness or the supposed ugliness that people think that we have to overcome and solve. It's where we can actually give ourselves those 5 minutes of reflection to, sit down with ourselves and say, and, take inventory, take stock, heal, to give that little love and appreciation to our mental health for saying, like, thanks for not letting me cry today, or thanks for making me cry today.
Time check, we have like almost 20 minutes, and just digging a little bit more to the archive now that we kind of have the establish of the basis of like mental health and trying to talk about it more. I'm gonna ask you guys like individually, how or when was the first time you experienced mental health?
Let's go. Sorry, I got too excited because it was a very quick flash memory. But my first time dealing with mental health, and I did not have the language for mental health until college, was in high school. It was my first breakup with like my first serious boyfriend. And I know it's weird. It's like, why would mental health come up in that space? But it's like, I was grieving and I was under a lot of stress from like a lot of backstabbing friends. And so, like, yes, I know. And so it made a very stressful situation for me where I did it during those times and I never let my mom know. I was experiencing some like panic attacks. I was experiencing social anxiety. I didn't have the words to name it until college, but I do remember the feeling of being nervous and getting sweaty hands, trying to go into my high school halls and feeling safe depending on what classroom I'm in, or just like the rapid like breath work that was going on whenever I saw my ex like walking through the hallways. That was my first experience with like mental health.
I think for me it's sort of the same, minus like the whole breakup thing. It was more so like the pressure of like high school and everything. So this was happening during like my senior year in high school. So there was like pressure to like do well on SATs and ACTs, pressure like to get into university. Like I had this stigma of like, oh, don't go into community college because it's a step below like university. So why would you go there? So it was a lot of like pressure I was putting on myself. Like there was a lot of pressure that was coming from like high school and everything. So yeah, that was the first time I experienced that.
And honestly, I don't remember when my first experience with mental health. When I go to the topic of mental health, the only thing I could remember is the earliest is most likely my middle school years. I for me, my middle school years was when I found out who I was. It was me searching like what I wanted to be as a person, like what kind of person did I want to be. It was like my middle school year was like my searching for my identity journey. um the earliest memory I can think of is like I have never felt so alone being surrounded by all these people that I call my friends. There was also a lot of like peer pressure. All my friends were dating. I never like I never like date. Like I never wanted to date anybody. I wasn't really interested in anyone, but I did how everything was in the environment. Everyone's doing this, everyone's doing that. It's kind of you feeling like you have to do it because you don't want to be left behind kind of thing. But yeah, that was like a lot, but yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. I know it's I wanted to do this because in the very beginning of the video I said, why is it so hard for us to be vulnerable? And I kind of did this in a way to open spaces, especially. I guess now I want to ask, what is your biggest takeaway from each other?
I guess oh, you want to go? Go
No,
ahead,
you
Alfredo.
you go.
Want to rock, paper, scissors for it? 1, 2, 3.
Regardless of like whatever generation you're from, talking about mental health is it's a normal thing. That's all I really got to say about that.
I took away a lot from Alfredo's story about like being a nursing student and his own experiences with like mental health stuff. It's very more, I guess, different from how I was thinking, from my own perception of mental health. And then I really appreciate like Jairah's stories too about like, and I also see you like hyping me up and like whenever it comes to my stories in the background. So I'm just vibing along with like both of y'all. Like that's what I really love about like, what I'm gonna take away from this.
One of the major takeaway from this is that how we're all low-key in different ages kind. Like you guys graduated college, I didn't graduate college yet, like those kind of things. It just makes me realize that regardless of what stage you are in your life, you can still be dealing with mental health kind of thing. And then another thing is that everything that you guys said, it just showcases that you are not alone kind of thing, and emphasizes that you like your mental health journey is at your own pace kind of thing. I say kind of thing a lot, but yeah.
Now look at that. Jairah is going to be quotable. Everyone go follow her at her @.
Okay, so I feel like as females, Nichole and I might share similar experiences, and Chachie, of course. But Alfredo, like, how was it like growing up and having that mental health conversation? Like, have you had that conversation with your parents or like to like a trusted adult kind of thing?
I would say yeah, but the thing is like the way my family structure is, there's majority females in the family. So like I'm the youngest out of like so I'm the baby of the family and then I have like 4 older sisters. So yeah, this is like I saw what they're going through. They're very like transparent about like what they're going through. So like I have an understanding of what they were going through, but I know everyone's experiences are different. So it's kind of like seeing them experience it made me like question. I'm like, okay, so what exactly is going on? So like I had like a bit of a gauge, but I didn't really understand what it was until like later in life and everything. So I guess there was a conversation per se, but not really like an educational conversation where it's like, oh, this is what this is.
Made up this acronym on the spot too because of your story, Jairah. It's called which is what it's called. I really was thinking like PSP, which is like patience, space, and personal boundary. So that's where it comes from. I'm not really good at it. Please forgive me, viewers. I'm really not.